Mohamed Refaat leads the International Organization for Migration, a UN agency in Sudan, and we reached him in Port Sudan. He says people caught in the fighting often just have minutes to flee.
If you imagined someone who just wake up in Toronto and they have to leave their city in 10 minutes, taking all they have or what they can carry on with the people they love and run for hundreds of kilometers away, hoping that they will come back in 2-3 weeks. And after 14 months, they are still in the displacement place if they are lucky, or if they have not been displaced again to another place, running away from another escalation of hostility. What we have seen that people who have been displaced are now almost reaching 10 million people who have fled their homes in Sudan in the last 14 months. 7.1 of them have been fled in the last 14 months, and 2.8 have been from previous escalations and war before 2023. Situation on the ground is dire. We see massive increase in the needs in food, shelter, water supplies, water for people who need health, and definitely education. Kids have been out of the schools for almost 2 years now, and we see that more than 50% of those who have been displaced are women, and more than 25% are children under 5 years old.
How are they coping with that situation, that dire situation that you've just painted for us?
The coping mechanism, I would say that the Sudanese are very resilient. They have been very generously hosted by their family members in other cities, by extended families. But this has also have been completely absorbed after 14 months of escalation of the war. So the UN and other humanitarian actors have been providing a lot of aid over the last year, but also we are massively underfunded. So we are providing food, shelter for them when we can. We are providing water supplies, but this cannot meet all the needs, especially with the lack of resources that we are currently facing. Sudanese have been coping also through a lot of, let's say, movement. So we have seen over the last year, more than 2 million of Sudanese have left Sudan to neighboring countries, mainly to South Sudan, Chad, and Egypt.
You talked about how things have escalated over the past 14 months. If you could explain how we got to this point.
So when the escalation started on the 15th of April 2023, it was very unique in the nature. So it started in the capital of Sudan. This is where the whole escalation started, which also reminds us that more than 36% of the displaced people in Sudan are actually coming from the capital, which is almost a war zone now. The situation, we only see increase in hostilities, a number of people who are dying, a number of people who are being displaced. And the situation becoming more and more violent for children and women, and we see and we hear reports of a lot of sexual violence and abuse. This is very much linked to the situation that most of the conflict and the war is taking place in heavily populated urban areas or villages, which remind us of what's going now in Al-Fashir, the capital of North Darfur, and with Wad al-Nura, the massive killing that took place among civilians 2 days ago.
And finally, just the challenge, if you could talk to us about how challenging it is to get that aid to those who are impacted by this conflict.
We definitely find a lot of difficulties reaching everyone who have been impacted and for them to reach us. The war has cut lines, has cut communication. We stay away from mobile lines for months. There has been roads that have been cut by the escalation of hostilities. The rainy season, access remains our number one challenge. The second is limited resources. When we talk about more than 25 million are in need in Sudan, this is a huge number of people to serve, and you need massive logistic and funding mechanism to support and reach every one of them. This has been limited by the lack of funding and resources that we have now. The third thing that we are actually being challenged with, that there is no enough ceasefire or peace talks that can help us at least have gaps between the escalations that we can access those that are in need. So I would take this opportunity and advocate for all parties to stop the war and to allow peace and ceasing the fire so we can access everyone who's in need.
That was Mohamed Refaat from the International Organization for Migration.